Hey everybody, this is Dr. Holcomb. This will be the final video of the semester. Yay! In it, I want to do two things. I want to talk about some revision strategies, and then also a few wrap-up items, kind of more logistical for closing out the semester. Now, this next week, you're going to be primarily devoting your energies to working on your final portfolio. That is, revising the drafts and turning them into final versions. What I'm going to be looking most for are substantive revisions, the quality of the revision. So just doing some light edits or changing some words or correcting some punctuation is really not going to do it. I want more substantive I'm going to be looking for more substantive changes to your paper. And if you all have my comments on the drafts, and for many of those comments, I was trying to encourage more substantive changes to the paper, so you can use those as starting points. The other thing that you can do as you revise your papers, your drafts, is to go back and check the assignment descriptions to make sure your final papers meet all requirements. For instance, this is the assignment description for the research argumentative essay. There are some very explicit guidelines about formatting and organization and requirements. But you can also find sort of implicit criteria or evaluative criteria in other ways in which I talk about the assignment, like make an arguable claim. I'm not just asserting something that's established fact. I make sure that my claim is something that needs persuasion behind it. Okay, another strategy that you can use is to use the they say, I say, and so what moves that we talked about earlier in the semester. If you remember, I described these as the crucial or essential ingredients of any academic argument, that it must be situated in some prior conversation, that you must contribute in some way. You can agree, you can disagree, or you can agree and disagree simultaneously. And then it also has to discuss the payoff. What do we get, or what do we gain from having read your essay? I have a little graphic display of how you could use these moves to organize your paper. So imagine this is your paper. It's only one page, but imagine this structure unfolding over 5 to 7 pages. Your first paragraph should execute the 3 moves, but in a compressed and miniature form. Some sort of compressed or summative version of the they say, then your thesis, that's the I say, and then so what. Included or implicit in your thesis should also be a preview of the the paper's organization, so that readers will kind of have a sense of where you're going to take them. Then the rest of the paper should expand upon each of these moves. A kind of natural way transition from the introduction into the body of your paper is to expand upon the they say, particularly with a focus on opposing views. And then to launch into your I say, which is going to be the bulk of your paper, that will unfold over multiple paragraphs, not just the one that I've represented here. 4 or 5 paragraphs. And each paragraph should be organized by a supporting reason. And I would suggest putting that supporting reason as the topic sentence of that paragraph, so it's highlighted, it's up front and center. And then in the conclusion, rather than just summarizing what you've done, the more important task here is to hammer home the so what. What's the payoff? Or what should we do? Let's just look at a quick example, particularly of how you can do that first paragraph. Here's an example from a student from a previous semester, and I've just coded these with little brackets. It begins with a they say move. Income inequality is an issue that has been around for a long time. Economists and American citizens have questioned what approach will effectively solve the issue, or at least improve it. The typical fix would be to equalize income distribution, to supply for the poor, and to increase taxes for the rich. Okay, all this is sort of conversation that's out there that's already happening, that's already happened, or it's happening right now. And then there's the pivot to the I say. However, given that this solution draws its inspiration from socialist countries like Sweden and France, it's a non-starter for many Americans. We need a different approach, one that works in a capitalist economy. More specifically, we need to encourage people to act as a community in a free enterprise market, to eliminate waste in government spending, and to put more money in people's pockets, which will increase their purchase power. So this is the I say, the thesis, and notice how it includes a preview that already you anticipate a particular structure, like people acting as community, eliminating waste, and putting more money in people's pockets. And then the so what. In the end, a determined and profitable community practicing capitalism and a free enterprise market will see a more stable economy. That's the payoff. And then so that's the intro, and then I just put the first sentence of the next paragraph. Economists have offered a variety of approaches to solve inequality. See how it kind of circles back to the they say and launches into it in a more expanded version. And then you would follow by your own argument, and then finally the so what. Sometimes the I say and so what can be combined into a single section. Look at this one. They say, all decent people feel sorrow and righteous fury about the latest slaughter of innocents in California. This is taken from an editorial, I think, the New York Times this morning. Law enforcement and its intelligence agencies are searching for motivations, including the vital question of how the murderers might have been connected to international terrorism. That is right and proper. But here's the pivot. Motives do not matter to the dead in California, nor did they in Colorado, Oregon, South Carolina, Virginia, Connecticut, and far too many other places. The attention and anger of Americans should also be directed at the elected leaders whose job is to keep us safe, but who place a higher premium on the money and political power of an industry dedicated to profiting from the unfettered spread of ever more powerful firearms. The so what kind of comes built in. I mean, we're talking life and death issues here. That's very different if you're making a case for, a vegan diet, although I guess you could say it's a life and death thing. But if you're doing, say your argument, we should shift to a vegan diet, you might have to do more to say why that's important. That is, you might need to execute the so what move more explicitly. Here, death, violence, things that are immediately in the news are going to come sort of built in with their own significance. Okay, so you can use the they say, I say, so what. Something else we learned from the They Say, I Say book is the quotation sandwich. This is a way of go through your paper, look at where you've quoted or paraphrased material, and make sure that each time you do so using a quotation sandwich. Now, what is a quotation sandwich? If you don't remember, it's the top part of the bread on top is set up the quote or paraphrase. The meat in the middle, or if you're a vegetarian, the peanut butter or the cheese, deliver it, making sure it fits seamlessly in the grammatical flow of your writing. That is, deliver the quotation or the paraphrase. And then finally, the final piece, the bottom piece of bread, explain its relevance. Here's an example of a drive-by or dangling quote. Ultimately, there are two phenomena that coexist: the lack of foods and goods to live by, and the huge amount of food and secondhand reusable goods that end up in landfills. Then all of a sudden we get a quote. Working age people are now the majority of recipients of food stamps, replacing children and seniors as the traditional primary beneficiaries. And I'm like, how does that go with the previous paragraph? There's no sort of adequate setup. And then in the next sentence, the student is already onto a different topic. Federal spending on food assistance program is evidence of flourishing need or of abuse and waste in a social society which depends on God. Oh, that shouldn't even be there. And waste. I'm sorry about this. Okay, sorry about that. This is a much better way of handling that quote. Not only are more Americans on food stamps than at almost any other time in the past decade, but the ranks of recipients have also expanded to include able-bodied citizens. According to the Christian Science Monitor staff writer, Elizabeth Barber, Working age people are now the majority of recipients of food stamps, replacing children and seniors as the traditional primary beneficiaries. This is a shocking change, even more so when you consider that it includes increasing numbers of college graduates. You see the difference here? It actually sets up the quote. This sentence does. And there's also a kind of mini setup here within the sentence where the quote appears, where you're announcing the source and the writer. And then the follow-up explains the quote and kind of takes the reader a step further. The final strategies I'm not going to talk about too much, but I have put handouts on, I think it's week 15 or week 16 of the weekly modules that you can read through. And one is, tests for thin writing by reviewing your paper's vertical development. How deep do your discussion go? You also can do what is sometimes called a reverse outline. That doesn't mean writing an outline in reverse. Well, in reverse, from end to beginning, rather than beginning to end. It's really to take your draft and back engineer it, so to speak, to transform it into an outline. You can look at the handout if you want to explore this possibility. Also, for style and grammatical issues, a good strategy for revision is to read your paper aloud. If you come upon something that sounds a little funky, it probably is. You can also, and I've never been able to do this, but I've heard people recommend this, is to read your paper backwards, start at the end and kind of go backwards. I think apparently this kind of unusual practice will throw possible errors or stylistic issues into sharper relief. Okay, now just a few comments as we wrap up the semester. Don't forget to complete the final quiz. That is, let me see, I think it's in week, hold on a second, I want to pause. Okay, I'm back. Yes, the final quiz is in the week 16 module. Go there. It's not long, but what I really want you guys to do is have an opportunity to kind of go back to some earlier material in the semester and kind of think about it rather than just to kind of leave it back at the beginning of the semester. Here you'll also see the handout on the reverse outline. This one on citation package is very close to what we were talking about a few minutes ago in terms of a quote sandwich. You can look at that. And there's also a handout on vertical development. Okay, the final portfolio is due December 14th. Turn it in under the electronic portfolio area on Blackboard and submit each final paper using the same assignment prompts that you used for drafts. Okay, let's take a peek over here. Let me take this down. So if you go over here, here's your electronic portfolio. You'll submit your final version of paper 1 here and using the same assignment that you use for your draft. You'll do the same for paper 2. These things will be time stamped, so I'll know that the one turned in first is the draft and the one turned in last is the final. Also, don't forget a cover letter. This is just an opportunity for you to highlight the more prominent or important revisions that you made in your paper. And you can also talk about your experience doing the revisions. What did you learn? How did it benefit you or not? And then also don't forget a public turn reflection essay. This is just a brief, I would say no more than a single page, opportunity for you to reflect on what you learned in the public turn. I think that's it. Yeah, don't forget to upload a cover letter and reflection essay in your public turn. I'm going to be around all week. You guys can contact me if you have any questions. I'll be around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in my office, usually 12:30 to about 3 if you want to swing by. Okay, that's it. I hope you've had a good semester. This has been an interesting experience for me. I've enjoyed it. And, best of luck on your exams and have a great break. Oh, if you haven't filled out the course evaluation, the online course evaluation, you should have received an email that gives you access to the course evaluations. Please do so by Monday. I know it's Sunday now. Okay, have a great break, and good luck.